purpose of a Phase 1 environmental site assessment is to use a consistent, systematic approach to identify any existing or potential environmental conditions that may be present or affect a real estate property. A Phase 1 ESA must be performed by an environmental professional who possesses sufficient specific education, training, and experience necessary to exercise professional judgment to develop opinions and conclusions indicative of a release or threatened release on, at, in, or to a property. A person who can perform a Phase 1 ESA is someone who has a professional engineer's or geologist license, a license or certification from the federal government to perform such assessments, a person who works under the direct supervision of the above accredited personnel, or a person who has acquired a Bachelor's of Science degree with 5 years experience or a non-Bachelor's of Science degree with 10 years experience performing ESAs. A Phase 1 site assessment is performed prior to a commercial real estate transaction when a lender provides a loan for the property, when a property owner wants to know the environmental history of the property, when a property use is changed or rezoned, or when applying for grant money or other government funding. Phase 1 site assessments are performed to evaluate the property for potential environmental contamination, to assess potential liability for contamination which may be present, and to establish an innocent landowner's defense should environmental contamination be discovered after the property is acquired. Phase 1 ESAs are performed on any piece of property including undeveloped land, apartment buildings, and retail strip centers. Phase 1 ESAs are performed on any piece of property including industrial properties, commercial buildings, and filling stations. U.S. EPA now strongly encourages and recommends that environmental professionals and prospective purchasers use ASTM E1527-13 when conducting AAI-compliant Phase 1 environmental site assessments to identify releases and threatened releases of hazardous substances at commercial and industrial properties. Recognized environmental conditions, also known as RECs, are the presence or likely presence of any hazardous substances or petroleum products in, on, or at a property due to any release to the environment under conditions indicative of a release to the environment or under conditions that pose a material threat of a future release to the environment. Some examples of RECs are former industrial use, automotive repair facilities, and unlabeled 55-gallon drums. Other examples of RECs are former dry cleaners, undocumented chemical use, and filling stations. De minimis conditions include improper disposal and minor oil staining. Certain records must be reviewed for a Phase 1 ESA, including regulatory database, city directories, aerial photographs, sandborne fire insurance maps, and topographic maps. A regulatory database is a comprehensive look at state and federal environmental databases. This includes regulatory information about the subject property and sites within 1 mile of the subject property. City directories are similar to phone books but order by address instead of name. Aerial photographs document site usage from about the 40s to the present day. Sandborne fire insurance maps include information for 12,000 U.S. towns and cities from 1867 to 2007. These maps include detailed information about buildings, property boundaries, historical tenants, and roads. Topographic maps are used to determine the nearest surface water and groundwater flow. The contour lines on the maps represent elevation changes. Colors on the map represent the type of development and land features of the location. For example, red shading indicates dense urban development. Other documents used in a Phase 1 ESA are FEMA flood insurance maps that help determine the flood probability, and soil maps which provide a description of major soil types that occur beneath a property. If no problems are found or if they are minimal and do not qualify as an REC, no further investigations are recommended. If RECs are found, a Phase 2 environmental site assessment is recommended. A Phase 2 environmental site assessment consists of collecting soil samples to screen for chemical or metal contamination. This can include sampling of groundwater and surface water. This testing is recommended when there is a significant potential for the existence of an environmental liability that can affect the value of a property. During a Phase 2 ESA, soil borings are taken at sites presumed to be contaminated. These soil samples are then taken to a lab for analysis to test for hazardous substances. Once a groundwater monitoring well has been installed, as shown in the picture to the left, a groundwater sample is collected, as shown in the picture on the right. This groundwater sample is then submitted to a laboratory for chemical analysis. If contamination is found on the site, remediation is recommended. This can include underground storage tank removal, monitoring well installation, and entrance into government program to assist in cleanup of site.